you're asking this question probably, like, Lord, what do you want of me?
Yeah.
Can you look back at that time and think, is there some significant turning points or realizations that you had that perhaps the Lord is calling me to religious life?
I did feel like a bit drawn to the Missionaries of Charity because like I knew life there. So I was like, oh, maybe I should be a missionary of charity. But when I looked at their life, I felt like I said, no, I can't be a missionary of charity. But I said no to religious life.
That's why I've never heard someone quite put it that way. At a natural level, you were happy, but at a deeper level, there was something missing. And you said you weren't completely given.
And it wasn't until like much later, I realized that I had said no, and I just like repented, and I just said like, Lord, I'm sorry that I said no to being a missionary of charity. And I just felt him say in my heart, like, I never asked you to be a missionary of charity. And it was such a moment of grace for me because I felt like in his response that I knew like he wants me to be more happy. Like he knows me and he knows exactly what is going to bring me like life and fullness of life. In that retreat, it was as if he showed me the Queenship of Mary. It was like, this is my desire for you.
So Sister Maryam Josephine, it's a joy to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this conversation, I feel like, had its makings maybe 25 years ago.
Something like that.
And here's the backstory. I remember when I first was aware of you.
Okay.
You were going to school at Rivier, ran by the Sisters of the Presentation. Sister Marian invited me to do a retreat. You were in the crowd, and then we had a time of prayer where Sister Marian was praying with some young people, and I was praying with some young people, and you came and you sat down in a chair, and you had a prayer request. And I remember your prayer request.
Okay.
Do you remember?
No, I don't.
You said with tears in your eyes, I just want to know God's will. And 25 years later, here we are.
Here we are.
I mean, we became friends after that, right? But 25 years, yeah. So, take me back to how did this happen?
Wow. I might need some Kleenex.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll put it down here.
Take me back to when you were growing up.
Yeah, okay. So
like as a little girl, like were you aware of the presence of God? Who was God to you as a little child?
So I grew up here in Saskatchewan on a farm. I was the second of 4 children, and we grew up in a Catholic family. We went to church on Sundays, and it was important, you know. I know my dad was like, we don't wear jeans to mass, or you know, like things like there was a reverence that was instilled in us, and we didn't miss mass on Sundays. It was important. I don't think like there wasn't this sense of like a personal relationship with God. It was like, I remember my mom saying one night, she tucked us in and she said like, and don't forget to say your prayers. But I remember feeling like, I don't know what that means even, you know, and just kind of being like a bit embarrassed about that. Like, I don't really know what this is about, but I was too shy to ask, you know? Yeah, I guess one of my earliest like memories when I think about my vocational journey especially was the day of my first communion. And that evening we had gathered at my home, and my great-grandmother had given me a little ivory cross. And my cousin had also received her first communion, and her gift was the same as mine, but mine had a little ivory cross. And something in that gift spoke a really deep truth in my heart of like being set apart. And I didn't really know what it meant, but like I come back to that, and there was like this knowing in my heart that I was set apart, but I didn't know what that meant. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we celebrated the sacraments. It was important when we were growing up. Was confirmed when I was, 13 or whatever. But yeah, it just kind of was outside of that. There was like a desire for goodness. Then when I was 15, I went to boarding school. So I stayed with the sisters, and it was beautiful to see their life and to see their, we had prayer together and things like that. So, and there was a desire for those things, but not a real understanding of like who God is or any of that until the years of youth group. And so, so one day when I was in high school, I was told by my cousin that we had a new youth minister, and his name was Ken Yazitsky. And so, and people were getting excited about what was going on. And so I was curious. And so I started getting involved. And from the youth groups, the weekly youth groups came the youth retreats. And so, I just remember being really intrigued by the teachings that we were receiving of just like prayer and an encounter with God. And to see, I was watching my peers come into that personal relationship with Jesus, and they would, it's like we would gather in an evening and they would say like, oh, this is what God is doing in my life. This is what God is doing in my life. And I just remember being like wanting to know that. And I remember one night the World Youth Day Cross came through the city. And so we had gathered in Saskatoon at somebody's house. And like even just the presence of like older mentors who like were taking their Saturday night to hang out with high school students really touched me.
Can you go by, like, was it people that I was?
Yes, it was you. Like, so it was like we all went to this event and then we all went back to somebody's house and we were sharing, just hanging out on a Saturday night. I think it was Saturday night in Saskatoon. And I remember as I was leaving, like we were just saying goodbye and you just said to me, like, keep going for him. Like, it was like you knew that I didn't know him, but that like I was on my way. And just like that word of encouragement and just like, what that meant for me is like you believed that I could have that. And so the beginnings was these youth retreats that we went to, and the one I think that stands out the most for me was in St. Walburg. So it was your home parish, one of the early ones, and we went there, and for me it was like just the place where Jesus became real to me, and I just remember like. I still have like a memory of like the image of that crucifix in particular, of just like recognizing that like, that he loved me and that he died for me. Yeah, I remember I went up in front of everybody and just said like, I have been kissed by Christ. Like it was just like this beautiful encounter.
Because we would open up the mics.
The mic, yeah. So it was just kind of
the ABCs of
sharing. Yeah,
audible, brief, and Christ.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, beautiful times of just like sharing faith and like growing in faith and getting excited about it and just putting Christ at the center. Yeah, just such beautiful season of faith and community. After that, I went to university, but I would just give every free weekend or every weekend we would gather, I would go and just like, I wanted to share Jesus with the people, with other people, and just to be a part of that, a part of like, just creating that environment conducive for encounter with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a line right from our Constitution. So I feel like already the Lord was preparing me for the life that he was calling me to, even in my days of face-to-face ministries. And
because you gave a lot of time in service.
Yeah.
And even as your young adult life progressed, and mine as well at that time, like you were the camp nurse for the Ignite camps. For the Ignite camps. And leading and serving in that capacity. I think a lot of that our friend circles were intertwined very greatly as well. Yeah. You went on to the missions trip to India as well.
Yeah. So after university, Janelle and I finished university the same year. And there was a group of us that decided that we wanted to go serve with the Missionaries of Charity in Kolkata, India. And we approached Face-to-Face Ministries and said, what do you think about this being kind of under Face-to-Face Ministries? And they were very happy to have us partner with them. And so then we were kind of, before blogging was a thing, we were kind of sharing our story as we were away. So we went for 4 months the first time. And again, like if I look back on my journey, like this was a very significant part of my story. I came alive there in a way that I had never experienced before. And when I look at the life there, we began our day with 6 a.m. Mass with the sisters. And then we had a quick breakfast, and then we went out to each of our apostolates. And it was really like a serving Jesus in the poor. And it sometimes sounds cliche in like, we serve Jesus in the poor, but really to encounter Jesus in the poor in a really significant way. And then we would end our day with adoration, so just Jesus in the Eucharist. And so there was something of that rhythm of life and of letting everything else fade away. All my relationships were kind of like on hold, or like the events at home, or, like everything that we fear of missing out. Mm-hmm. I had parked all of that back home and just was like free to serve and to be. And in community too, I think even that piece too, just like to belong and that kind of thing. And so I would often talk like over the years after that experience. And I think, first of all, like, again, really encountering Jesus in the poor. Like I had some very profound experiences of like Jesus coming to life and him being like in the flesh in my encounters was sure. Yeah, I think one of them that is very dear to my heart was just this one time we were on the station team, so we would go to the train stations and we would just seek out the poor, and we would bring like food if they needed it, but sometimes we would, if they needed to go to the like a home to kind of get better, if they were sick or hurt, we would bring them with us. One day we were walking down the platforms, and one of the volunteers and I came across a man who had already died, and so he was like a bearded man, and all he had around his waist was like, they called it a lungi. It was just like kind of like a thin towel around his waist. And so to come across this like lifeless body of a man, yeah, there was something of that transcended, and it was as if and she said, oh, like, see if he's alive. And so I like touched, like I took his pulse to see if he had a pulse, and he was dead. And so there's just something of like, to touch the body of Christ in that like very profound way. Yeah, it just like, it really pierced my heart. Yeah, and just to see the people around just like passing by as if nothing mattered, and just kind of even the link of how, yeah, Jesus dies every day, like his sacrifice is offered each day in the Mass, but like how many people are so indifferent to that. Yeah, so just kind of like all of that tied together. And so just, yeah, it just really became, again, like this personal experience of Jesus.
So that really left a mark on you.
It really did, yeah. And I think one thing that I wrestled with, because I felt like that, yeah, that's all, like there was something, like I wrestled with why did I feel so alive when I was in Kolkata, like different when I'm back in Canada. And so I would talk to my spiritual director about like Kolkata Michelin, like who was she? Like who was she and why was she so alive? Because I wanted to live in that life, right? Like that sense of like the glory of God is man fully alive. So I felt like I had tasted myself fully alive. Yeah, and so
like now what does that look like?
Yeah, what does that look like? I do feel like I found that. Like I feel like the journey to that place was long for me. I was a bit of a later vocation, but coming into this life, it's like, yeah, I begin my day with adoration and Mass, and I spend my day saying yes to whatever he's asked of me and to serve him, in my sisters or in the people that the Lord brings in my path. Yeah, just to belong to him and to belong, like the meaning, like to have a life of meaning and purpose in being self-gift.
Right. You skipped quite a few years there from like Calcutta to like the Queenship, and I know that's fine, but like that, how long was that period? That was a number of years.
Yeah, like
we're talking 10?
Yeah, at least 10.
Okay, around there. So if you look back at that 10 years after, you're working as a nurse.
Yeah.
And you're asking this question probably like, Lord, what do you want of me?
Yeah.
Can you look back at that time and think, is there some significant turning points or realizations that you had that perhaps the Lord is calling me to religious life? Mm-hmm. Or is this a gradual grind to that point?
Yeah, I think it was like many, many points, but like I think one significant point that I think is notable is about 2013. So I had gone back to Calcutta twice more, but just before I went on my third time, I had led some groups of young women to go to join in that experience because it was like I wanted to share that. Yeah, I wanted to share, like this made me so alive.
This is one-off thing for you. I forgot that.
Yeah. So just before my third time, I came across the consecration to Mary. I consecrated my life to Mary, and I felt like that was a very significant turning point. It was like almost the image that comes to mind is that like the sail of my boat was opened, and so I was no longer like the one steering, and it was just like there was an invitation for the wind of the Holy Spirit to move me wherever the Lord wanted me, And so there was definitely a significant shift in the way that I was going about life at that time. After that, there was just like a more openness to to the Holy Spirit and where he was guiding me. I think when I think back to my time in Kolkata, one thing that I did feel like a bit drawn to the Kolkata, like to the Missionaries of Charity, because I felt like I knew life there. So I was like, oh, maybe I should be a missionary of charity. But when I looked at their life, there was two things. One was they only visited home every 10 years. And I thought, oh my, like my niece is 2 and she'll be 10. Like I just couldn't imagine being away for that significant of a time. And the second thing was that they didn't eat in common. They only ate like in their own community, because they didn't want to like have the rich or the poor treat them differently or to be treated differently. And so they never ate outside of their community. And for me, that was like the real kicker, was just like, I felt like common meals are so like a place of life for me that I just was like, there's no way that I can do that. And so I just felt like I said, no, I can't be a missionary of charity, but I said no to religious life. And so I think, I put up a wall there. And it wasn't until like much later during a time of adoration that I realized that I had said no, and I just like repented, and I just said like, Lord, I'm sorry that I said no to being a missionary of charity. And I just felt him say in my heart, like, I never asked you to be a missionary of charity. And it was such a moment of grace for me, because I felt like when I said no, I felt there was like a belief that like he wanted me miserable and I didn't want to be miserable. And so I didn't want what he wanted. But it was like in his response that I knew like he wants he wants me to be more happy. Like he knows me and he knows exactly what is going to bring me like life and fullness of life. And so it was a moment of like opening myself up to like trust what he might maybe inviting me into. Yeah, so that was like, again, a significant shift for me, because it was like I could say yes. And so then in that place, I was opening myself to like possibilities. So I went to visit some different communities and spent some time, like different amounts of time with different communities. So, yeah.
It's interesting, that moment, because the Missionaries of Charity are good.
Of course they're
right?
good. Of course they're good.
And we think, well, because it's good, it must be God's will. And we impose that upon God. Well, it's good, therefore it must be God's will for me.
Yeah.
Where this is so beautiful. They just said, but I didn't ask you to be a missionary of charity.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful, beautiful moment. But sometimes it makes it more difficult, because then you have many good things before you.
Yeah.
Which one is God's will?
Yeah.
And so you have options.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like what drew you to Missionaries of Charity? Queenship of Mary. Because I know that at one point you were thinking maybe the single life.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did go on a bit of a quest of like discovering like where shall I serve you, Lord? I visited a few communities. I spent some time at Madonna House in Ontario, and yeah, really came alive. I served at the St. Therese School of Faith and Mission for a while. And even that was like, oh, this is a beautiful community. And yeah, and when I was there, when I was serving at St. Therese, the students would give a year or 2 years, and then they would go and like respond to God's call on their life. And I just thought like, oh, I'm like older than them and I haven't given my yes. And so I went into a time of silent retreat, and it was a very significant retreat for me. And in that time, I really felt like the Lord invite me to give my whole self to him, because I had dated, and like I was just kind of like, yeah, there was like a bit of a pressure in my circle of friends, like, oh, like this is a nice guy, and just kind of a pressure to marry. That was kind of like, most people get married, so like you should go there. And I tried that, but I felt very unsettled in my relationship. Yeah, and just so that time of retreat and giving my whole self to the Lord just really freed me. So again, that was like another significant part where I'm his. So now, like, how do I live that out? So I was discerning with the Diocese of Saskatoon, consecrated virginity lived in the world, and I was pursuing that. I was in discernment with the diocese and doing some formation. When COVID hit, it was a very sobering time for me. That Easter, I found myself alone in my house. My roommate had recently moved out just before COVID, so I was by myself. The churches were closed, and I watched the Triduum online by myself. I think people just didn't know what was happening. And I was working at the hospital, so people were afraid that I was like in contact with COVID. And so I found myself very alone. And the communities that I thought I was a part of, and I was a part of, just were not there for me in that time. And so I, again, was like opened up to the Lord and just say, like, what do you have for me? So again, I took a time of retreat there and really sought the Lord. And it was during that retreat and the Lord had already been revealing different parts of my heart to me, of just like a desire to serve priests and that kind of thing. But in that retreat, it was as if he showed me the Queenship of Mary. It was just like it was like, this is my desire for you. And
were you aware of the Queenship?
Yeah. So I had met them a few years back. Like, I'd heard about them, and then I had seen them, like when I was in Madonna House, they had come for spiritual direction. And my spiritual director was saying like, oh, well, maybe you should contact them, kind of over the years, but I never had. And then they came for a mission here in Saskatoon, and I attended and met them. And our co-founder, Father Ben, was there, and he like kind of pointed me out, and he said, oh, like this one, she's full of joy, she should join us. And I was like so embarrassed. I was like, oh my goodness, what you know? So I tease him now that, like, you know, anyways, that I'm the fruit of his teasing. But anyway, so I was aware of them, but they were also very, like, Queenship of Mary is a very new community. So they were founded in 2007, and there was a lot of just growing pains in a new community. And so even though my vocation was delayed, I think the Lord prepared me for the time that I entered. You know, like the community was only ready for me, and I only ready for the community at the time when I entered. So just trusting in God's plan and his timing, even if it's outside of what we believe might be the right timing, you know? So there was like this joy and this like deep knowing that like my fullness of joy would come in the Queenship of Mary. I don't really know if I can describe it any other way, but this prayer welled up in me of like, Jesus, I trust in you, even though I don't understand. Like, I don't understand why you would, you know, invite me away from like my friends and my family and my career. And, you know, like I had a good life. I was happy on a natural level, but in the deep part of my heart, there was like a deep restlessness of just like the ache of like not being fully given. And so, it was just a great joy as I discerned with the community. At one point, I wrote a letter requesting to vow, and to have the community say, like, we invite you to vow. Like, that was a really significant moment for me, because I've heard it said, like, when people are discerning, it's like God calls, man responds, and church affirms. And so for me, it was like the church is saying, like, the church is inviting me to give my life in this way. And so it's just like, was a great joy for me. And it has been a great joy. Like, the day of my vows was like a very special day. In our community, we receive our religious name. And so we submit names ahead of time, but it's the day of our vows. Like, as we're vowing, Mother kind of calls us in religion, you will be known as. And then for me, it was Sister Maryam Josephine of the Child Jesus. And I was so nervous before. I was just like hyperventilating almost in my pew before. But it was just like a great relief. And I just felt like the Lord had given me this like treasure and this new identity in my name that I would spend my whole life discovering. And it has been a source of great joy. Yeah, and just like an anchor for me. Like, often I'll like just like come to prayer and be like, okay, I'm Sister Mariam Josephine of the Child Jesus. And like tell me who I am in this, you know? And so, even post vows, like I remember I was staying at the Mother House. We were still kind of in construction. And so I was cooking in the basement, and I remember just coming upstairs and going out to the garden to like pick squash for supper or whatever. And I just felt like I just remember being like, I'm so happy. Like, I'm just so happy. Like, just like I belong to Jesus, and like my only job is to love him. For those, I think it's like St. Clair says, like, for those who love, work is rest. So like, just kind of like to just give myself, like, it was just like to pour myself out in love. And there's just such a grace and a joy in it. And I think that like, that's the source of my joy, is like every morning I I'm invited to come. Like we come into the chapel and just like have time with Jesus. And then from there, it's like the overflow of that being poured out to those around me, you know? So, yeah.
One thing that you said I find really significant is that you had a good life. Mm-hmm. You know, you were happy.
Yeah.
At a natural level.
Yeah.
But you said, but at a supernatural level? Is that how you describe it? What
yeah, or like
at a
deeper level. At a deeper level.
That's why I've never heard someone quite put it that way. At a natural level, you were happy, but at a deeper level, there was something missing, mm-hmm. and you said you weren't completely given. Mm-hmm. I just wonder if people are aware of this in their life. Mm. We have a good life. Mm-hmm. In Canada. Mm-hmm. Many people might be watching from the United States, but like, generally speaking, life is pretty good. Mm-hmm. You're not going to walk to the train station, subway, and find someone who's mm-hmm. passed away.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, at a natural level, there's no reason to be unhappy.
Yeah.
We got it good. Mm-hmm. You know, what would you say to a person, a young woman, maybe who's like, my life is good, mm-hmm. and they've never considered the religious life. I'm fairly happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You draw the what's going on deep inside that heart? Like, you know, that's what I think. And I'm pointing this finger at me too.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Am I completely
sure.
given?
I mean, we can all say that for sure. Yeah, I think part of it, like, I think even in my years of wrestling, one way that I heard it described, and it really resonated with me, was like the ache and the sigh. And so like kind of like this, there is a sense of like we're made to be gift. Like it is not good for man to be alone. And so we're made to be self-gift, you know, like I think it's John Paul II who talks about the law of the gift. It's like you are made to be given. And so naturally there will be a restlessness if we hold back. And I think that's part of what I wrestled with, was just like I wanted to have like all the good things of my life and
to be at peace.
Yeah, and to be at peace. Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah. But yeah, if I like my word of advice for women, for young women, would be give God permission, because He's not going to invite you into something that is not going to be happy. I remember one time I was going on a retreat to visit a community in the States, and I had gone for lunch with my sister, and she said, "Well, you're not going to go if you don't want to go. Like, and if you go, we're going to support you, and we're going to rejoice with you in that. But like, you know, in the sense of just like you have free will. You have free will. So like nobody's ever going to force you to do something like vocational. Like the one requirement for every vocation is like you have to come freely, or you can't. You won't not.
Can't enter into it.
You can't enter into it. That's like the necessity is free will. So, but like when we come to a place where we trust that God knows us and loves us and has our best interest at heart. Then we can take down those walls and receive the gift that He's inviting us into.
I see a pattern in your life, as you've been sharing with me, is that when you've taken time and set time aside, that is when it seems like the Lord has spoken to you. At least those are the moments you've shared with me.
Yes, yeah.
I think back to the very first time I remember you, this time was set aside.
Yeah.
And we prayed.
Yeah.
And then there was a retreat. You set time aside.
Yeah.
And you said you were kissed by Jesus.
Yeah.
And then you take more time aside and you go to Kolkata.
Yeah.
And you find yourself becoming alive.
Yeah.
And then you take more time aside and you go to another retreat.
Yeah.
And you go to see orders. You take time aside and the Lord works with that. I think that's just such a valuable lesson. I don't think that's unique to just you.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But it's beautiful to see that pattern. But we need to take time to hear the Lord.
To listen. The words that are coming to me as you're speaking is like, seek the Lord and He may be found. You know?
Yeah.
Call upon Him for He is near. You know, like he wants to be, like the Lord is at work. And I think that's the other thing that I often think to tell people is like, the Lord is at work, but we need to like bring attention to what he's doing, because he's already at work in people's lives and hearts, you know? So like if somebody's struggling in their vocational discernment, it's like the Lord is at work, but like we need to quiet ourselves to like listen to what is he about? What is he, you know? Because he is about, he's already doing it. He's already orchestrating it despite us, you know?
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So Queenship of Mary, if somebody wants to learn more information, we're going to flash the website at the bottom of the screen and they can check you guys out.
Perfect.
I really am blessed to know you.
Thank you, me as well. Thank you, Ken. This is really special to be here today, so thank you.
Thank you.